this idea of yoga as yunjante manas uta yunjante dio, yoga as yogically controlling manas, the outer aspect of the mind, but also employing and developing the di, which is the Vedic term for buddhi, or the inner aspect of the mind. And the deity of the verse Savita is the same deity as Gayatri mantra, representing the solar force of transformation. In the yoga tradition, the founder of yoga is not Patanjali. Patanjali is a great compiler at a later point of time. Founder is said to be Hiranyagarbha, but Hiranyagarbha is also Savita. And as we say, the Hiranyagarbha, in the Vedic thought, the Garbha is not an outer, the Garbha is the Hridaya. It is the spiritual heart. That is where all the devas or all the gods are born. Another hymn of Vamadeva that we find in the Aitareya Upanishad mentioned for that particular purpose. So there is a tremendous secret knowledge in the Vedic text connected to the science of sound and mantra, and also the science of light. Kavyakanta Ganapati also explained that there's a basic equivalence of 4 factors. Pranava as the primordial sound, Prakasha as the original light of awareness, Prana as the supreme force of life, not the mortal prana, but the immortal prana, which is the Shiva or the Indra principle, and then Purusha. Purusha as the factor of self-awareness. All these factors are connected together. Sri Aurobindo once remarked that the modern scholars, in terms of having understood the Vedas, says the Vedas are like a great temple, and the modern scholars are shooting marbles in the courtyard outside the temple. They have not entered into the temple grounds, and they have certainly not entered into the inner sanctuary. So the Vedas are this great work of the rishis in this ancient mantric language. There is another great Vedic guru who is alive today in Rishikesh, who is Swami Vedabharati, and he has also done some very excellent work on the Vedic text and Yoga Sutras. Another great teacher was Brahmarshi Devrat, who was a disciple of Ganapati Muni. He was from Shirshi, so I think he was not far from this area. S. Vyasa had a conference last year that had his son. So they have some very important works in Sanskrit on the Vedic text by these teachers. Brahmarshi Devrat was where Maharishi Mahesh Yogi took most of his inspiration on the Vedas. I recently received some pictures of when Maharishi brought Devrat to Europe and to United States back in the 70s before he passed away. So Agni represents that whole secret of the Vedas, which is also the awakening of our own deeper aspiration, our own deeper mindfulness, meditation, a mantra, and the development of the sadhana. For us, Veda means knowledge, but it is at the higher level. Veda, of course, is Atma Vidya, but at the outer level, it has all the other Vidyas, the cosmic forms of knowledge as well. So that Atma Vidya is the inner meaning of the Vedas, and the outer level Vedas cover all the sciences, so both Para, Apara Vidya are there in the Vedas. And we regard yoga as the practice of Vedic knowledge. That's a broader definition of yoga than what you might hear. But actually all the Shadarshanas have yoga. Every aspect, Vedas have karma yoga in the rituals. They have bhakti yoga in the suktas to the deities. They have prana yoga, main deity Indra is also prana. Meditation, a mantra is there. So Veda and yoga always go together as the theory and the practice, or as the inner knowledge and its manifestation or expression. That Vedic yoga, that Vedic teaching needs to be entirely reclaimed. And then, of course, question arises, Veda and Vedanta. Many of us are taught that the Vedanta is the Upanishads, which is the Jnana-kanda, and the Vedas are karma. They represent karma-kanda. What Ganapati said, also Sri Aurobindo and some others, that jnana and karma are two ways of understanding the Vedic mantras. And that jnana is more evident in the Upanishads because of a more transparent language, but is not, they do not originate at that level. And that is why in Upanishads themselves, for the highest knowledge, Vedas are usually quoted. Yasa aditya purusha, Vedas say, aham surya evajani, I was also born as the sun. Even this Ishopanishad, this Agni Naya Supataraya Asman, that is a verse of Agastya from Rigveda. So if we actually look into how the Upanishads look at the Vedas, they see them in that deeper inner light. Now, if we look to the Ayurveda is also centered on the principle of Agni. It begins Jatar Agni, or the digestive fire, which is the basis of health and well-being on a physical level. If your Jatar Agni is sufficient, you will overcome all diseases. If it is insufficient, some aspect of ama, toxins, undigested food matter will accumulate, mix with the doshas, move to different parts of the body, and cause various types of chronic or acute diseases. Study of Agni is very central in the whole Ayurvedic tradition. But Agni is also of various forms. The digestive fire, or the Agni in the belly, digests the gross elements in the food and turns it into the tissues of the body. But we also have the Prana Agni, the Agni of Prana, which we have through the lungs, which is responsible for digesting the air, the oxygen, and for turning it into the energy that runs the body, and also which can specifically feed the sense organs and the mind, and is also expressed through motor organs, which all work or all function through prana. And even from the standpoint of Ayurveda or yoga therapy, which we work with, we say main healing practice of yoga is pranayama. And that if there's one thing you can do for your health and well-being every day, it is the pranayama. It is a lot less expensive than the drugs. It has no side effects, and it also does more, has more positive benefits. So not only balancing the digestive fire, keeping your pranic fire strong, balanced, and harmonious is also extremely central for overall health and well-being. And when we bring the yoga into it, we can use the pranayama, the pranagni, to burn up physical toxins, but also to burn up emotional and psychological problems. A lot of our problems can be breathed away because what happens is, as we know through yoga, mind and prana always go together. Chitta spanda, prana spanda go together. So we hold many of our samskaras, our emotional disturbances, on the breath or in the prana. Prana is more than breath. Breath is a manifestation of prana. But through working with the breath, we can release the energies hidden in the mind, hidden also down to the subconscious nature, as well as affecting the physiology as well. So actually, yoga emphasizes the pranagni quite a bit. And the pranagni is the foundation of the Kundalini Shakti, which is inner power, inner fire of yoga. It develops from the Jata Agni downward, which the Jata Agni is developed from, of course, the Agni in the heart. And it is that Kundalini Shakti, or that fire below, that burns up the impurities of the ego and the lower chakras, and that also then is connected, or as it ascends, to the soma, or the nectar of the Sahasrar, the 1,000-petaled lotus of the head. So even this practice of the Tantric yoga is another yajna. It is another Vedic sacrifice, the ascent of the Agni, the descent of the Soma. And we feel that practices were known even in Vedic times because they speak of the rishis for hundreds of years and of having, like Chavana, Chavana Prash, but Chavana Rishi had his great longevity and rejuvenation. That would only be possible if they could access these subtle rejuvenative soma factors. And the Vedas give a great emphasis to soma. Previous to this book, I did an entire book on soma alone, soma relative to both yoga and Ayurveda, and inner powers of rejuvenation, and also our ability to change the chemistry of the brain. Brain has its secretions that give health and well-being and harmony. These are like inner somas. And through yoga, mantra, meditation, Ayurveda, special rasayana herbs, Medhya rasayana herbs, we can change the chemistry of the brain directly so we can have health, well-being, emotional, physical, and spiritual happiness without needing to resort to all the use of drugs that we have going on in the world today, which has become a big epidemic. In other words, a lot of the secrets of Ayurveda develop out of the same Agni, and what we are doing in our practices is moving from subtler, from outer aspects of Agni to inner aspects of Agni. Every kosha of the kosha has its own Agni. And I want to remind you of the famous verse from the Bhagavad Gita that you use for eating food. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagnau, Brahmanahutam, Brahmena tena gantavyam, Brahmakarma samadhina. What does that say? Brahmagni. What is that Brahmagni? It's actually not just the physical Agni at all. It is a spiritual Agni. Brahmakarma samadhina. So it's even connected to the samadhi state. That Agni, which in the ordinary levels first exists on the earth, also then has its vidyut, its electrical or lightning form in the atmosphere, its Surya form in the heavens, and it has its subtle forms. Even, of course, the main principle of the subtle aspect of Agni is tapas. Tapas is the supreme power and principle, and of course Agni is also the power of tapo loka. Tapas is the basis of yoga. The second pada of Yoga Sutras begins with tapas. In fact, tapas is a great synonym for yoga as a whole. So looking at these different forms of Agni at a cosmic level, Surya as Agni as a level of Jyotish. When we look at the devatas that correspond to Surya, we have Surya, Agni, and Shiva. We then have Soma. We have Chandra, the moon, Soma, or the water principle, Apas, and also Gauri, Parvati, as these dual Agni-Soma principles. Agni-Soma are the dual, like the yin and yang of everything in the universe. And we're also said that Lord Shiva is also we speak of the Agni-Somatmakam Jagat, the entire universe that is Agni and Soma. When we are doing the mantras for the planets, a lot of the Vedic mantras for the planets are Agni mantras, not simply just the sun.